And welcome back to me channel. My name is Rusty, and this is me channel where I talk about my favorite movies, mostly horror. My favorite music, mostly metal. And welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. So, continuing my little picking a few of my dystopic post-apocalyptic movies, we are moving on to 2016's Daylight's End. The Dead Will Rise. Now, Daylight's End was released in 2016, and it stars Johnny Strong, Lance Henriksen, and Louis Mandylor. And all I can say about Johnny Strong, well, besides, he's got that new movie coming out, Warhorse 1. I can't wait to get that. That looks cool. This is not, that's a war movie. But this is this is different. But, yeah, I think Warhorse 1 looks really good. I really love Johnny Strong. I really love his music, too. He sounds just like Chris Cornell of Soundgarden. And he plays a cross between grunge and metal. And you can go to find his website and you can listen to his music. There are some videos on YouTube of Johnny Strong, some of his music. Like I said, it's metal. It's sort of a metal grunge mix, and he sounds just like Chris Cornell. It's phenomenal how much he sounds like Chris Cornell. And that's him right there. And the only other thing I've got to say about Johnny Strong is, oh goodness, that boy makes me hotter than Georgia asphalt in a July heat wave. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, there's more than one reason I love this movie. Okay. So, we are introduced to his character, which is Rourke. Rourke is, you can tell it's a post-apocalyptic. You can tell it's, we're in Mad Max territory. He's looking for supplies in his souped up, grilled up car, and he finds this creature at this gas station. He hears a noise. He's looking around for useful shit, and he finds this creature in a freezer, and he opens up the freezer and it tries to jump him, and he closes it, and he ends up hooking a chain to it, and then using his claw he drags it out into the light and then kicks it over, and the creature comes out. And it's sort of I like the Zeds in this movie. They are of the 28 Days Later variety, but it's like they're part zombie, but they're also more part vampire. So, they're after blood. And, well, what did I just tell you? The thing cooked in the sunlight, killed it, burnt it up to a crisp. So the zombies in this movie are half zombie, half vampire. And of course it was a plague, it was a virus, so it can be, spread through bite. So yeah, and they are of the 28 days variety, meaning that they are fast, agile, and very, very angry. So, the virus has swept the nation. It's a new wasteland. We see him remembering, obviously something happened to his wife, I guess. It's nothing but a short flashback. He roams around for supplies. He ends up fucking up and going into an infested building. Even though it's daylight, sort of like the Omega Man, you only go out during the daylight. So he gets into an infested building. There's some really cool scenes, some jump scares and fights and that while he tries to escape. he does manage to escape, and he ends up on the roof with no shirt on, where he's watching it looks like a cop car, and these rather military looking people get out. I think it's like 4 or 5 of them. They get out because there's a girl sitting in the middle of the road. Oh no, she looks about 22, but she's rocking back and forth. She's got a little baby doll in her arms, and she's like lullabying it, and you're like, okay, this bitch is crazy. She's dropped her basket way back. So they get out, and they go up to her, and they're trying to help her. They can tell she's not infected, but well, of course not, because she's in the middle of it's the middle of the day. So they walk up to her, and then all of a sudden, a bunch of marauders attack them. And there's this really good shootout fight. Of course, Rourke doesn't show up until all the other 4, the 4 dudes are dead, and he manages to get down there and show up and starts taking out the marauders, when only the girl was left. I'm like, well, yeah, how sexist is that? You know what I mean? You couldn't have come a little earlier and saved a couple of the dudes as well? Come on. But, so, one of the things before the fight started was, they were like, creatures, humans, creatures, aren't we on the same side, I mean, we've already got to fight them. Why we got to fight each other? But of course, they're fucking, if that was to really happen, that's exactly the way it would be. You would have survivors who wanted to fight unified against the creatures, but then you would have the militias and shit like that who are like, oh, we finally got what we wanted. We can have our little paradise in the cornfield, in the mountain. We can, what's that dude, the political dude, the one that was associated with the Oklahoma City? Anyway, like them, they're going to be out there too. I think a lot of movies don't take that into consideration. These kind of post-apocalyptic movies, they often ridiculously assume that the survivors of the apocalypse, be it zombie apocalypse, infection, plague, solar flare, whatever, that the destruction of society is going to mean that humans are going to unite and fight against the evil. Which is a joke beyond all measure. Because just what they had said during that conversation, like, why are you ambushing us? There's these creatures to kill. Shouldn't you come and help us fight the creatures? No, because they want to be, Proud Boys. They finally got what they wanted, which is anarchy. So they get to set up their own little things. Humanity is not going to unite and fight the zombies. That's not the way it's going to be. The good people are going to have to fight the zombies and the assholes who want to have their mountain retreat. So that was a good little... I went political, but there you go. That's just a true statement. So he watches these 2 groups fight and goes down there and kills everybody but her. But now he really doesn't have any interest. I think maybe if he'd have got down there earlier, he would have saved the guys. I don't think it was sexist, I just didn't think he got down all the way to the bottom of the building before they had killed the other 4. And he doesn't have any interest in her in that way. He starts to leave, like, bye. And she's like, but, and I'm stuck here. Can't you help me get back to the base before night? So she then ends up telling him that she is with a group of survivors, and that these survivors, they have found a plane, a cargo plane, and they're going to go somewhere safe. If he can take her back to them, then it's led by Lance Henriksen, who plays a character called Frank. So if you take me back to them, along with this poor flipped out one. We will give you ammunition, guns, supplies, gas, whatever, and you can, as thank you. So he's like, well, okay. So he takes her back. He meets the rest of the little group of survivors, which is about 40, 45, between 40 and 50. And they have this little society inside of the jail. I believe it's Houston. So the big giant jail, they've turned into their base, right? And he meets Frank. He meets all the other people. A lot of them don't trust him. They tell him the plan about how they're going to go the next day, get on the plane and take off. They do take his weapons and they put him in a cell because they don't trust him, And he understands that, and he's like, okay, but, I'm not going to take any shit, but all right. So he does that. Frank puts him in a cell until he becomes trustworthy. They had found a cargo plane, and they're going to fly them all away. They do tell him, though, that there's been an upsurge and a problem lately. That they keep getting sieged every night by these creatures because they seem to be more organized. Something has changed. Now, she then brings Rourke into it by saying, I saw you look at that, because Rourke is like, who's the big one? Because there's this one big hulking leader, sort of like in the Resident Evil movie. There's this one big hulking one. And they're like, I don't know. But things have changed since he showed up a few weeks ago. Now, the girl, she's like Sam. She's like, I saw you looking at him like you recognized him. And he's like, no, I don't know who he is, but I know what he is. I know of his existence, but I don't know who he is. So he doesn't quite let you know what about it. So Sam had asked him why he recognized the leader. We then have some Zeds that get in through the ventilation. We have some losses. And then a really sad scene is where Harker gets bit, which is kind of funny. Mina Harker from Dracula, But he gets bit. And that's a really sad one because he's a really good guy. And when they've settled the problem and somebody notices that he's been bit on the arm because he was trying to hide it, he knows what's about to happen. They know what's about to happen. And it's a pretty sad scene because he has to be put down. And he's like, wait, don't do it in front of my daughter. Please take my daughter out of the room and stuff like that. And then you see him start to change and Frank has to shoot him. And that was pretty sad scene. Right, he has to be put down by Frank. Come morning, they can't get out. That the underground garage thing where they were going to get out. Well, they can't get out, and they don't know why. So they end up going up, coming around, and like all of these creatures have completely put like an entire junkyard full of cars, stacked them up all around the exit so they can't get out. So they start trying to come up with a plan. It's like, well, what the fuck are we going to do now? We have this plane waiting for us, and we can't get to it. And these things are going to get in and kill us. So they kind of have a little argument, and they come up with two different plans. Rourke is like, I'm going to give me explosives. Give me supplies. I'm going to go to their den and I'm going to kill them during the day. And because Frank's plan is like, we need to go and find some cars because we can't get our cars out that we were going to go to this plane with. Somebody's driving up and distracting me. So we are going to have to go through the city, find some cars that work, take some batteries, because it's been 3 years since this happened. Find some cars enough to carry us all and bring them back here. And they're like, but we can't do that in one day. And we can't move these cars because they'll pile them all back up come nightfall. So, okay. Frank starts working on his plan. They go out. 3 or 4 people, is it 3 or 4? I think it's 4, decide to go with with Rourke. And they're going to go to this. So, Chris, Ethan, Drew, and Vlad go with Rourke to try to blow up these creatures, to give Frank and his plan time to work. So they go to the hotel den. There's a lot of nice search and destroy scenes, a lot of jump scares that are really well done. They finally do find the den at the bottom of the basement, and it's like this big giant sea of these Zeds, and they can we can put an explosive here for this entrance, but we got to get over there and put an explosive on that end for that entrance so that we can then bring the building down on them. So Drew, which was sad, he's like, I'll do it. So he tiptoes through this stuff, which is pretty tense, and he gets over there to the other exit, the other stairway exit, and I kept seeing, as he got close, I kept seeing, and I'm like, is that somebody standing there? It's like you could just see their shoulder and their hip, and I was like, I think somebody's standing there, and so he gets up there and he turns around to them and he's like, I'm fixing to do this, and then the leader, Papa Zed, he comes up behind him. I'm like, I knew that was somebody fucking standing there. And he grabs him and he rips his throat out, and you're like, well, fuck, there goes all that. Everybody wakes up. It's a big, gigantic fight. Very cool. Lots of shooting and stuff like that. And then we got wonderful chase scenes where they go after Rourke and who's left? Drew's gone. So Rourke, Chris, and Vlad and Ethan are left. Drew's gone. So they're running up the stairs. They get separated. They think Chris is dead. That was some cool scenes. They think Chris is dead. Vlad gets separated and hurt. And then he's like, y'all go ahead. So Ethan and Rourke, they have to go. Vlad, that's a good scene with Vlad because he takes out a whole bunch of them while he's getting ripped to shreds, and he ends up pulling out a grenade and blowing himself up along with 100 of them motherfuckers. So Ethan and Rourke make it to the roof, and they're like, oh, what do we do up here? Now the whole time, you remember, that leader and Rourke have been the alpha. The alpha and Rourke have been whatever you would call it, snubbing each other. See him at the end of the hall, it's like, come get me, motherfucker. And it's like, I'm coming to get you. So they keep dodging each other and playing shit and this cat and mouse thing. So they're up there and they're like, what the fuck? Now Chris, I thought Chris was dead, but Chris comes on the radio and was like, they're like, oh my God, are you okay? And he's like, yeah, I'm stuck in a room and I think I'm just below you here on the top floor. So they're like, well, you've got the rope, for them to scale down the building. So they decide, well, we've got no choice. I'll go down this way and we got to go this way and we've got to get into this room and see if we can save Chris. So they get down there, but he's in a big fight and he's bitten. And it was at Ethan. Ethan gets to him and gets real sad because he's up against the wall dead. And I'm like, well, there's no such thing as dead in these kind of movies, is there? So he goes up and he gets the rope off of him because that's the rope that they need. A rappelling rope. So Chris, of course, turns, jumps up. Him and Ethan fight. Ethan manages to get away from him. He manages to get back up there with Rourke, who has went and fucked with the alpha a little more. Come on. So they end up back on the roof together. And then Ethan notices he got bit. And he's like, well, Chris got me. Now, this is Frank's son. And Frank has already lost his other son when the plague happened. And Ethan had to kill his brother. So now here he is bit. So he hands him the rope. And he takes a swig of alcohol. And then you sort of see through his eyes, things turning red. He starts to change. And he knows it's coming. And Rourke is just waiting behind him, letting him have his last few moments of sanity. And then as soon as he goes too far and his eyes start turning red, he's talking his philosophical shit. And then Rourke shoots him. And now Frank has lost both his kids to this plague. So when he gets back, as you can imagine, Frank and Rourke are like screaming at each other because now Ethan is dead too. This other guy named Vince, he shows up with a bus, right, and parks it outside. Unfortunately, so neither plan has worked. They weren't able to find an automobile and get away before sundown. And Rourke and his team were unable to blow them up. So neither of the plans worked. So when Frank and Rourke are like bitching each other out, you got my son killed, your plan was shit. And then Rourke is like, well, really, your plan didn't work out so well either, so yours is shit too. And Sam is like in between them going, you both fucking failed, shut up. What are we going to do? So another siege comes. They've got to make it through one more night. If they can keep that bus safe and keep everything going, so they all hunker down, right, for this last siege. And there's a lot of really good action. This asshole named Dugan, he manages to stay outside and he tries to flee in one of the cars that they had gotten. And they're like, what an asshole, but I'm sorry, but I'd have done the same and probably ended up in the same. And that is, he tried to get out, but it was already sundown, right? So the roads are full of this shit. He gets caught in an alley for turning the wrong way. And next thing you know, his car's got like 3,000 of them motherfuckers on top of it. And he starts crying and blows his brains out. So that's what you get for being a coward. But then again, was he a coward? I mean, you're trapped outside. I don't know. I don't think he was a coward. I think it was just an asshole who was like, fuck you, I'm gone. And it didn't work out well for him. So we see a lot of good action inside. When Vince and, what's her name? She was a good character too. But Vince, he gets killed. They all head back in base. Both plans have failed. Dugan outside tries to run, gets caught, tops himself. They must hold base one more night. Rourke admits now to Sam when they have this little personal conversation. Rourke admits to Sam that it was because of a fight with that alpha that his wife got turned by that alpha. Not only that, but she was pregnant when she got turned, and Rourke had to kill her. And Sam, she tells her backstory. She was, that Ethan guy, she was the fiance of his brother. And she told how that happened. The apocalypse happened. They stayed inside. He got turned. She went and hid in the bathroom, waited for him to come rescue her. He got turned, came in, tried to kill her, and Ethan had to shoot him. So there's that backstory. And that was pretty cool. So he's like, well, I'm taking care of it tonight. And then he goes after the alpha. And she's like, well, let me go help you. And so I know the motherfucker's in here. So he's like, no. If these people manage to get out, they need a leader. And you're it. You're a good leader. Frank has a good death scene. He gets trapped in a room, and he manages to take a bunch of them out. Vince and Ernesta, they have an ugly death scene, but a very brave one. And that's what I'm saying. Like, the death scenes are heartbreaking because you really do kind of like these people in this movie. And when Vince and Ernesta, they were just side characters, but you knew enough about them and their personality came across so well that when what happened to them, you did feel bad. And they did all go out bravely. I will say that. They went out bravely. So even though the deaths were bad in this movie, each one of them went out fighting and went out in a good way, in an honorable, they would have all went to Klingon heaven, is what I'm saying. You can't enter Klingon heaven if you die in dishonor. And all of the people in this movie, except for the asshole that ran, that's true, but all of the people in this movie, aside from him, they died very, very honorable deaths. Fought to the last second, took out as many as they could, and died very valiantly. There you go. So, Vince and Ernesta got turned. Frank got killed. He died very valiantly too, taking as many as he can with him. We then see Rourke and Alpha's showdown, which was a really good showdown. That was a good boss fight. Worthy of Resident Evil kind of boss fight. He ends up managing, you don't really know what he was doing at the end, because I'm like, dude, why are you letting him back you up into a stairwell? Because I'm like going, Rourke, sweetie, you're good. But don't you see that you're backing yourself into a corner? And, you're backing yourself into a stairwell? And I didn't notice the door behind him. But then when he got up to it, I'm like, okay, so you've backed yourself up into a stairwell next to a door, but can you open it? But he didn't want to open it. And I found out why. Because when he then acted all helpless, like, you got me, come eat me, the alpha came and attacked him and knocked the door down. Turns out he had led him to the door to the roof. So when that door came down, him and the alpha rolled out into the sunlight, where he then stood up and watched the alpha be like the Wicked Witch in Wizard of Oz. You know what I mean? He boiled and bubbled and turned crispy fried. And so that was it for him. The roof door where he is deep fried, yeah. They all end up leaving on the bus, but as they're leaving, her and Rourke and, the survivors, they have a little discussion where Rourke says, that he's not going to go. He's going to stay behind. So he refuses to go with them. And she's like, okay. So there wasn't any romance in this movie, which is good for a change. She's like, okay. He says, they'll find some way to get to you wherever you go. So, well, we got to keep trying. Well, why, where are you going? And he's like, I'm just going to do what I've been doing. Because there's more of them to kill. So he's obviously a little road warrior with a mission. And that is to kill as many of those creatures as he can before somebody gets him. And that's the way the movie ends, is he heads off to continue his mission, and they head off to try to reach safety or to get to that plane and then go to some island somewhere or something where they think they're going to be safe, some kind of sanctuary. And that is 2016's Daylight's End. I think this is a very, very underrated movie of this genre. And if you have not seen this or know anything about it, you really should have it in your zombie. It fits in your zombie collection. It fits in your post-apocalyptic collection. It fits in your dystopic Mad Max type collection. It will go into all of those genres. And there's a lot of military fighting, what would you call it? Martial arts, mixed martial arts, and things like that. So it would probably even fit into action type genre. But yeah, it's post-apocalyptic Z vampire creature cross. And yeah, Daylight's End with the Johnny Strong. Very good acting, all of them. No bad acting. Very good for a low-budget movie. Good kills, good gore. I love the Zeds in this. They're 28 Day Later Zeds, like I told you. Fast, agile. They seem to be more interested in blood than flesh, though. But they still rip you to pieces and eat you. But, yeah, lots of good action. Lots of honorable fights and honorable and valiant kills. It's a really strong movie as far as that kind of content goes. And I will see you in the Bad Batch, which is next. I will see you in that. Love you, miss you, bye. Always remember, never forget, you are a very special person, even if you are not a vampire zombie cross looking to eat my flesh. You're still special, even if you're not a valiant warrior hero like Johnny Strong. I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Thanks you very much for stopping by and taking the time to say hello if you want. And I will see you soon. Bye.